Thank you, Alan. That was phenomenal. So, the talk title today is You Are a Spiritual Broadcasting Station. So let me just take you all guys all in for a minute. I see a few smiles out there. No crossed arms. Nobody shaking their head like my mom would be saying, Michael, get on with the meat of the talk. So this month we're studying from the great book, Living the Science of Mind. And it's a collection of Dr. Ernest Holmes. Dr. Ernest Holmes was the founder of the Science of Mind philosophy that we love and study here. And he wrote these essays and sometimes taught them in a correspondence course, maybe making the material in the Science of Mind textbook a little bit more reachable. So I know I'm not the only one who at times have had to read one sentence in the Science of Mind textbook 5 or 6 times to pick up the nuances and the little truth behind it. But in this essay, he talks about, do you know that every one of us is this spiritual broadcasting station? And what makes it like that is that we're this living, breathing spiritual being that is thinking 24/7 and acting on those thoughts 24/7. And he also says it's like a river or a circle that comes back, because not only are we broadcasting, but we're receiving. And why is that so important? Why are thoughts and our actions based on our thoughts so important? For this group, it's really important because it gets back to one of our core principles, and that's the creative process. You get back to what we like to think of is, in the ancient Hindu tradition, is consciousness is the ground of all being. And in the teachings of Jesus, it is done unto you as you believe. Your faith has made thee whole. So it's the start of this creative process. And we believe here what we think and what we act on is life-changing. So we're not these entities that are someone else is rolling the dice and we have to take the faith that someone else gives us. We have the power to think, and our thoughts and our actions have power to recreate our world. And that's all well and good, and there's sort of good news and bad news behind that. Because since our thoughts create our reality, there's different ways that you can approach it. And we're always at choice. We're always at choice at what we think about. And Dr. Holmes uses an analogy. Suppose you're broadcasting anonymity and resentment. And let's do a thought experience. You walk into a room, there's 100 people there. You're broadcasting resentment. And guess who's that's going to resonate with? The people who are listening for resentment. So you're gathering and you're like snarked back towards you. And you gather in this little couple, this little group of 5 or 10, and they're saying, can you believe what that person did to me? Oh my God, that's so terrible. And so you're in your element. But the thing about the way the law works, it doesn't judge if we made a right decision on what to think. And you've heard me say this time and time again, one of our problems is we don't think what we're thinking about a lot of times. We're in this habitual thinking, and we think what people tell us or anything like that. So you can think what you're thinking about. Before you go into that room of 100 people, you can change your mind, because we can always change our mind. Now you're going to go in there, and your thought and your broadcasting is success. And you get these smiley, driven, high-energy people immediately come back to you, and they're supporting the success. They're joyful, they're focused, and that's what they're putting out, and that's what they're tuning in to receive, is this great success, because they believed that the gift was already given to them, and they could have this life of the divine, not tomorrow, but right here and right now. And so you have to put forward what you want to receive. And in the old terms, that's called the law of attraction, which has nothing to do with the movie that came out a few years ago. I'm talking about the law of attraction that was talked about 100 years ago. And this law of attraction is this broadcast station, what you put out, you're going to attract to you, and you're going to be embellished by this great environment, external environment, to make you do what you think you can do. One way or the other. If you're feeling bad about yourself, Katie barred the door, because you're going to attract that to yourself. So somehow you have to think about what you're thinking. Very much so. And part of this, that's why we teach these principles. We teach great principles here. But I encourage you not to be on your high horse about principles. And Dr. Holmes says this in the essay. He says, we need to be tolerant. He says, if someone throws a brick at you, you just step out of the way. And then Dr. Holmes is funny. He has a dry sense of humor at times. He says, the only reason you're probably catching the brick anyway is to throw it back at the person. And why would you be doing that? No, so what you're doing, this is the spiritual broadcasting station that you are. You're the owner, you're the manager, you're the DJ, and you can dress it however you want. And when you make your right choices and follow up with right actions, great stuff can happen for you. But Dr. Holmes says, use tolerance and compassion. And so my personal story about that was I had an experience. How tolerant and compassionate can you be then driving with the family, at least me and my two teenagers, Nicole and I's teenagers, and talking about what we're going to listen to music on the radio. So, Nicole and Haley always come first, so of course it's rap. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Gabe and Haley. And yeah, it's rap. And I'm perfectly down for 2 or 3 rap songs. But normally I say, well, you've had your rap, so can I put my 30-minute lecture of philosophy on for... And with a few milliseconds, the eyes are rolling back. But I didn't do that this time. I looked at them, and I experienced the teenage years, the awakening, that you're awakening. You don't have all these negative things or limitations. They're awakening. They're ready to step into adulthood with this gaze in their eyes, with unlimited things they can do. And I was thinking that was me 40 years ago. And that was me. I was engaged. I was empowered by the music. But my music was Bruce Springsteen. I thought there was nothing better in the world. If I was feeling down, I put Bruce on and I was fine. But what I'm saying is I was experiencing that through them. And that's also what you can project, not just your beliefs and your principles that you won't get off bat from, you can project compassion. And I had a very great lesson early on from my mom about this. So I was blessed to be raised in this teaching, and my mom was very powerful. And she was letting me know that I didn't have to buy into what other people have told me. What I was just saying earlier about habitual thinking. And then she went on about hereditary diseases and things like that. And she told me a story that when she was going into the Air Force when she was 20 years old, the doctor told her she had a congenital heart defect and her heart could fail at any time. But she told me this, she says, Michael, we all have tapes inside of ourselves on our bodies, but we're at choice whether we play those tapes or not. You're absolutely at choice. So if you don't play those tapes, the tapes will not be heard and you'll be fine. And so she's done her spiritual practice. She's taught me science of mind for, I know I'm on camera now, so it's now 66 years. Because she'll remind me if I get that wrong. She's 86 years old. Still going strong. Her heart's still going strong as can be. So anyway, that's about broadcasting what we want. We have to take action. We have to broadcast what we want. But we don't have to make our decisions all by ourselves. Because all the great spiritual traditions, which Ernest Holmes studied all of them, they have guidelines. The Jewish tradition certainly had a lot of guidelines and structure. To live a good life, you follow these things. And then Jesus came on and added love for each other, charity, you are your brother's keeper, and just be a blessing to everyone. The Buddhists have the Eightfold Path of living a good life. And the Hindus, I like the Hindus' teachings a lot, and they have this concept of dharma, not karma, but dharma. And dharma is just guidelines to do your sacred duty. And if you do this sacred duty, it's the same principles we teach here, your life will expand and be wonderful, and you'll have a good and fulfilling life. So these are all the things you can do externally, but think about your spiritual broadcasting station. And think about what you're broadcasting, and think about what you're receiving in the external world. And there's a whole other side of this on the good that can happen in your internal world. But I'm going to let Reverend Nicole tell you about that. God bless you, and thank you.
Yeah, you don't want to say anything, use any negative thoughts or verbiage in front of Michael's mom. She is not going to handle it. She'll put you in your place, for sure. And she does this head shake. I know you're watching, Ann. I do love you. Okay, I'm not going to pick on the musicians this time. I'll save it for Bill, okay? I'm going to ask you a question at the end. You be ready for it, okay? So we're talking about being a spiritual broadcasting station, and I want to talk about that station, this building, this being that we are. So I don't know if you remember, did anybody ever watch The Matrix, the first one? Some of us? Yeah. Okay, well, even if you haven't, I'm gonna tell you about this one scene where Neo, he's like this, he just took the pill, right? So now, like, he can actually see and he's aware of reality, like what's really going on. And he's running from these agents who are shooting guns at him. And all of a sudden, like, time slows down and he's able to, like, maneuver himself to dodge these bullets. And afterwards, one of his, like, cohorts, Trinity, she says, wow, you were able to dodge all of those bullets. And there was like a hole in his pants, and he goes, well, not all of them. Not all of them. And he, at this point, was stunned. He had no idea that he had this kind of power within him to dodge these and to kind of slow time down in order to really use his mind to protect himself or to take care of himself. And I think that this is such a great metaphor for us, because I don't think that we always know or feel how powerful we really are. I don't think that we always settle into the conviction, the spiritual conviction, that we are the authority of our life, that we are the most powerful beings in our own universe. And I know sometimes that word power can get convoluted in our minds because we sometimes associate power with ego or negativity or the people who are ruling the world. But there is a power inside of us that is so strong and so dynamic that it can dodge bullets. And what our job is, I believe, as this station, as building this station so that when we broadcast who we are and our energy and vibration out into the world, that it is healing and supportive, we need to first prepare ourselves and learn to manage our energy. Manage the energy of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our beliefs. Einstein once said that everything is energy. That everything is energy. And I would like to flip that around and also say that energy is everything. That the energy that we put towards anything is everything. There's this health psychologist, her name was Kelly, I'm going to get her last name wrong, let's just call her Kelly. She wrote a book called The Upside of Stress. The Upside of Stress, okay? And she's a health psychologist, so she used to, for years, go around teaching people and telling people that stress was bad for you. You know, there's good stress and there's bad stress, but to have a lot of this stress in your life, it was going to, kill you sooner than later. And then she decided to do a study to evaluate and see the real effects on stress on our life. And so her and her team, they were able to take 30,000 people and evaluate them over 8 years. And each year they would check their cortisol level, which is the stress hormone in our body. They asked them how much stress was in their life. They asked them what was going on in their lives. And then they asked them what their belief was about stress. What their belief was about stress. And the results were so incredible. I would not have thought this, but I bet once you hear it, you're going to be like, oh yeah. So what she found was that people who lived high-stress lives were 43% more likely to die prematurely. That people who live high-stress lives were 43% more likely to die prematurely. But actually, it was only those people who lived high-stress lives who believed that stress was unhealthy. So, the people who had lived high stressful lives, who were busy all the time, who were always engaged, who it wasn't always easy and relaxed, but they had no belief that stress equated to unhealthiness. They just knew that they were just being who they were. Those people had no greater risk of dying prematurely than those who had a low stress life or a healthy stress life. So it was just the people who believed that it was going to hurt them, that it was going to affect them. And so our beliefs in anything and everything are so important. This is why we must prepare ourselves and manage our energy. I know that we talk a lot about thoughts here, that Reverend Michael probably said it 20 times already, that word, but we are living the science of mind, right? So the National Science Institution, they said that we think 70,000 thoughts per day. And I think that's somewhere around 1 thought per second. I don't know. Michael's the math genius, not me. So what percentage of those thoughts do you think are new thoughts that we didn't think yesterday? Be gentle on yourselves. Okay, 5%, not 10, 5% of the 70,000 thoughts that we think are new, okay? So that means that 95% of our thoughts we're repeating day after day after day after day. And what do we know? What I know is that majority rules, right? Not every little thought we have is going to create some fabulous or disastrous event. Not every single little thought we have is going to demonstrate in some way, but the majority rules. So, here's how it goes. Our thoughts create our judgments, and our judgments create our decisions, right? Our thoughts create our judgments, and our judgments create our decisions. Whether it's a happy judgment or a negative judgment, however you want to judge the judgment. From the moment I stood up here, you had a judgment about maybe the way I spoke, or the way I looked, or the matrix you're still thinking about, or the 70,000 thoughts, or the stress. And you're having thought after thought after thought. And then you're having a judgment about that thought. And then you're making a decision about that judgment about that thought. And it's happening in a split second. So I want to remind us something. Write this down if you need to. Self-sabotage comes from unconscious thinking. Self-sabotage comes from unconscious thinking. And sometimes we might wonder, how am I supposed to make all this unconscious stuff that I'm not even aware of conscious, right? That's the preparation. That's when we prepare. We prepare, we prepare, we prepare. We prepare by studying. We prepare by having mentors who have what we want. We prepare by listening to what somebody said served them and trying it out for ourselves. That's why we were called religious scientists, right? Because we believed, or we knew, or Ernest Holmes knew, that yes, there is a science to the way our mind works. There's a science to the way life works. There's a science to the way spirit works. And it is a principle, which means it's always and forever and cannot not be. So we prepare. Tony Robbins, he once had the opportunity to interview Nelson Mandela. And so these are like two big dogs, right? You know, who doesn't want to hang out with them? And so Tony Robbins, he goes, tell me, how did you survive 27 years in prison? How did you survive? And Nelson Mandela, he kind of sat up straight, and he looked kind of stern and intense. And he goes, Tony, I did not survive. I was preparing myself. He said, I did not survive. I was preparing. And so we can take that idea, and we can even imagine Nelson Mandela, oh, this poor guy, and he got thrown in prison for something, and I don't believe he should have been there, and oh, how sad that is. Or we could think about ourselves and our own situations, and oh my gosh, maybe your broadcasting station is fine and sturdy, but mine's been through some hurricanes and tornadoes, and it is just not solid. And that's just the way it is. Well, that's not just the way it is. That is not just the way it is, unless you believe it is. Right? It's not the way it is. The way it is that there's this eternal light and life within us that can never not be so, even if our bodies are deteriorating. There's a spiritual life within us that has always been and always will be. And we can never truly be broken. The Navy SEALs, they have this motto, and I don't know, if you were a Navy SEAL and you didn't have this motto, don't shoot me, but this is what I was told, okay? They say that in a crisis, you do not rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. In a crisis, they do not rise to the occasion, they sink to the level of their training. And I think that this is the same with athletes, with musicians. That's why I'm going to ask Bill. Bill, as a musician, I want you to give me a percentage, okay? Or as a play, whatever it is that you're doing the most of right now. What percentage do you actually perform versus practice?
Well, I practice.
You practice.
The practice is a small part of it.
But do you practice more than you perform?
Well, I did.
Right? You did.
I did.
You did.
A lot in order to
Yes. You practiced and you practiced and you practiced and you practiced until now, in every performance, the level that you sink to is higher than it could ever be, right?
Oh,
Way higher, right. And so we prepare ourselves so that the level that we sink to in any experience, in any situation in our life, becomes higher than it's ever been before. And, you know, I'm sure we've all probably hit rock bottom, whatever that means to us, or had our dark nights of the soul. And then something within us said, keep going, keep going, keep going. And so we practice and we prepare And we remember, and we remember. And if we forget, we find somebody who hasn't forgotten, and they remind us, right? And we practice, and we practice, and we practice. And it never ends. And I just want to share a story with you real quick. Who here came to Reverend Michael and I's wedding? Quite a few of you. Okay. So last year, this very day was our wedding. So thank you for coming. We made it through a whole year, somewhat unscathed. And what I remember is that for years, 4 years exactly, it's a lot when you're a single mom. For these 4 years, after being in unhealthy, tumultuous relationships where I felt like I had 3 children instead of 2, I said, that's it. I'm going to care for my children, and I'm going to create the kind of person who can meet and match the level of the kind of consciousness that I want to attract. And so I practiced, and I prepared myself, and I lifted myself, and I created myself to be in such a way that I could draw to me someone who was healthy, who was whole on their own, who didn't need my happiness for their joy, who could support and care for me in a way that was beautiful, who knew that even when I was at my worst, that I was a light, was a spirit of the divine, right? And it never would have happened had I not practiced and prepared and managed my energy. And so what I want to remind us all is, in the end, Neo in the Matrix, instead of having to dodge and slow down time to move around these bullets, he was able to just put his hand up, and the bullets that were coming at him just fell. And that's what I know for us. That's what I know for every one of us, is that we have that same power within us. That when that self-talk comes at us and it hits us like a bullet, when those people come at us and they just want to tear us apart, or they're rude or cruel, and those bullets start coming at us and we feel like we're going to fall down or crack or break or whatever, that we remember that we have prepared ourselves. And that we can just lean back and allow it to pass. We can just lean back and allow it to pass. We don't have to pick up the brick and throw it back. And so I want to just invite us into a moment of prayer, of knowing right here in this moment, I feel and sense the energetic level of spirit, of the divine intelligence that we are all living within. There is a good. There is an ultimate good that has no opposites, that has nothing opposed to it, that lives within us, that is us, that the only experience of God that we can have is the experience that we allow to move through us, the only experience of spirit, of life, of truth, of beauty, of love that we can have is the experience that we allow to be broadcast through us, and this is happening right here and now. I affirm this for every one of us because I know that we live in the same mind, and the same consciousness incorporates every one of us as one life. And the life and the mind of spirit, of consciousness, is at peace and is fulfilled in every moment. Therefore, our life is at peace and fulfilled in every moment. Right here and right now, that is truth. And how grateful my heart, my body, my soul, my spirit is to know this and to hold us all at this level. Thank you. Yes, thank you. More, please. And so it is. Thank you. Thank you.